Where am I looking? Hey everybody, welcome to Healthy TV episode number 6, and I'm really excited to be back on the show today. I was actually away last week, and I was hoping to do a show from the road, but I had a whole bunch of really excuses, but things that came up. I was unable to get online, get a solid connection, and I didn't want to waste your guys' time. So I thought I'd save the content for today so that I can make sure that you guys get access to this, I think, really valuable information. Because today what we're going to talk about is 5 steps to stay on track when you're traveling. And because I was traveling overseas, I'm going to kind of take a bit of a slant on, kind of farther distance traveling. So when there's changes in time zones involved. This is something that I've been fortunate enough to do a lot of traveling, and I've certainly done it incorrectly, and I've learned a lot along the way. And I wanted to share with you some tips and strategies that I found to ultimately maximize the holiday, maximize the vacation, maximize your time while you're on the road, so that you can get the most enjoyment, the most value out of that time, energy, and money that you're spending to travel. Now, I will put a caveat here. I was traveling solo, so I don't have kids. I won't include any tips and strategies because I'm not a parent myself. I know that adds a whole other layer of complexity. So perhaps in the comments below, if you do travel with family, with children, then maybe add your own tips and strategies to help maximize the enjoyment when it comes to managing kids, and particularly as it relates to different time zone travel, because I know that can be pretty challenging for kids. So the principles I'm going to talk about today, actually, I think you could apply to any travel, but in particular, for me, I was really trying to get the most out of my trip. I was in Scotland, which is a cool spot. I've spent a lot of time in Scotland over the years, but it had been a decade since I was there, so I really wanted to get the most out of that trip. And when I was planning to go, I actually started to think of these, what is it that I do to make sure that I get the most out of that vacation. And I think the very first step, and I'll just jump right into these, is the very first step is to have a plan to deal with jet lag. I know the first several times that I traveled overseas, I didn't really know what to expect when it comes to jet lag, and it's really easy to fall into the trap of kind of being stuck in this cycle of really jet lag, where you're staying on the old time zone. So some things that I've found to really help is and really the goal is to get onto the new time zone as soon as possible. So in my case, I was traveling to the UK, 5 hours difference. So I'm going east to west, or sorry, west to east. And the challenge when you're doing that is usually it's an overnight flight, and you're arriving on UK soil or wherever you're headed, and it's the next day. You're all messed up because you didn't really get a proper night's sleep, or maybe catch a few minutes here and there on the plane, and the temptation to go to bed is really strong. Now, what I find is that if you can, if you're feeling like really tired, so for me, I arrived at my destination and it was already 3 p.m. the following afternoon, so I'd been awake for a long time. I was exhausted. But I just took a 20-minute nap, and I actually set my alarm, and I forced myself to get up. I was knocked out for the 20 minutes, but that gave me a second wind, and I was able to then last until 9:30. I think it was about 9:30 or 10 o'clock. And I suggest that you try and really stay awake until that time. So you just try to get on the new time zone as soon as possible. And then the other thing is to actually still force yourself to go to bed. So whether you're going east or west, to get onto that new sleep cycle as quickly as possible. So my normal sleep cycle, I'm in bed by 10, I'm up by 5:30 or 6. So I wanted to get onto that cycle as soon as I could. So a couple other things, I think when the next day you want to make sure you wake up at the desired time. So don't let yourself sleep in. Again, the temptation is there. Your body clock is still pretty messed up. So, set a few alarms, force yourself to get up, and then the key thing when you wake up is to get outside. You want to get into natural light, no sunglasses, get your eyes exposed to natural light, and get moving. So go for a nice walk. This is what I did. I got up early, I went for a nice walk around the neighborhood I was staying in. And or if you're a bit more ambitious, you can go for a run or do a workout outside. The point is to get outside, get into natural light. That'll really help to kickstart your transition to the new time zone. The other thing you can play around with is taking some melatonin. So as you go to bed, about 20-30 minutes before you go to bed. You don't want to do this too long, but if your vacation is 5 to 7 days, you can supplement with melatonin over short periods of time. Just take the prescribed dose, 20 to 30 minutes before bedtime, and that can really help again to reset your own internal clock. So that's number one. So address jet lag as soon as possible, and that leads to number two, which is really to prioritize sleep. If you're on holiday, usually one of the goals is to recover, and the biggest part of recovery is sleep. Now, I don't expect that you're going to just sleep away your whole holiday, but it's easy to get caught up in all of the activities, particularly the nighttime activities, and staying up late and then sleeping in. And I'm all for enjoying the holiday itself and enjoying those nightlife activities. But ultimately, if the goal is to recover, you want to make sure that you really prioritize sleep at least most of the time. So you can leverage naps if you aren't getting to bed on the right time. But really, I think for me at least, a holiday is about really recovering and regenerating my body and making sure that I'm coming back mentally alert. So sleep is super important for that. So that's number two, is prioritizing sleep. Number three is about food. So one of the challenges that a lot of people talk about when they're traveling, especially if you're in a different culture, is finding food that still matches up with for me, it's what we teach as part of Eat by Design. How do you actually stay on track with your meals? And a couple of things that I've learned over the years is that I think the most important thing is to be prepared, right? Have some food with you, whether that's bringing food from home or getting to a grocery store. That's usually my first stop the next day after I arrive, is to get to a grocery store and stock up on a few key things that you can carry around with you, things that you can put in a hotel room fridge, and that's going to at least give you some gap fillers in between meals, so that you're not reaching for those easy unhealthy snacks, the cookies and the chips and the chocolate and that kind of stuff. So be prepared. For me, I went out first thing and I bought some nuts, I bought some almonds, I bought some mini carrots, celery sticks, some guacamole, because I had access to a fridge. I bought some cold cut meats because they're really easy to just grab a handful and throw in my mouth. Some apples and some dark chocolate. So that's a pretty varied list of stuff, but I found those things that really helped me to just kind of have some snack foods. And then the other thing is about eating out. I ate out at least once a day. In some cases I ate out twice a day, and it's really not difficult, particularly in the Western countries, really not difficult to stay on track nowadays. I was really impressed that last time I was in Scotland, again a decade ago, it was actually still pretty tough to find like a good salad. Nowadays it's very commonplace. And everywhere, I even ate out. I had I went to two different Indian restaurants, had meals there, and an Italian restaurant. Definitely not bastions for gluten-free typically, but I was able to find meals on there, easily find meals on their on their menus. And I think probably one of the best meals, actually the best meal I had the whole time, was at the Italian restaurant. I did not order pasta, but I had ossobuco, and those of you who have had that before, it's amazing slow-cooked veal, and it was incredible. So there's lots of options. Just make sure that you're staying, I would recommend staying grain-free and pulse-free if you can, so no beans. And just ask the question. So if the sauces, do they contain gluten? Do they contain MSG? All restaurants, certainly my experience, any good quality restaurant, they're going to be able to answer that question readily. So that's number three, is having access to good quality food. And I think just to kind of adjunct to that is planning to go off track. This is a really big concept. Again, we teach in Eat by Design. The goal is not to be at 100%. Like it's great if you could be perfect, but we all know that perfection is it's difficult to attain. And so for me, I knew that I was going to have a couple of off-track meals, and I just planned it. I was going to have some fish and chips one night because I'm in Scotland. that's a delicious fish. I love that meal. But it's definitely not typical part of my diet, and so. So I planned for that. There's a couple of nights I had a few drinks, and that's, I planned for that. I was okay with it. I didn't beat myself up, but I also made a plan to get back on track the next day. And that's the most important thing, is to plan. Don't let yourself get just sucked in to the temptations. Have a plan, and then stick to that plan. So that's number 3, finding good food. Number 4 is to exercise. Now, one of the most common comments I get when I'm traveling, and particularly if it's a holiday, if you get a typical holiday, you go down south and you're on the beach, and I'm always finding places to do workouts, and one of the most common comments I get from people is like, "You're on holiday, like you should be taking the week off. You don't need to exercise." I would argue that it's one of the most important things that you need to maintain in terms of habits. It doesn't mean that you need to go super intense, but incorporating daily movement is super important, especially if you're changing time zones, because it's a very a really easy way to reset your body's clock. So really simple stuff, mobility work in the morning. So I always do my joint-to-joint mobility in the morning. If you don't know what that is, just put a comment below what's joint-to-joint mobility, and I'll send you a link to a video, and you can get access to our joint-to-joint mobility. Super easy, it takes 7-8 minutes in the morning. I do it every morning. I also travel with a lacrosse ball. That gives me a simple tool, doesn't take up much space, but that allows me to do some soft tissue mobility, some self-massage. And then doing some like hotel room workouts, really easy. They don't need to be long, 4, 8, 12 minutes. There's a concept called Tabata, which is, you choose 1, 2, maybe 3 exercises, and you cycle through. You do 20 seconds of the movement, and then you take 10 seconds off, and then you do 20 seconds of the movement, 10 seconds off. You do that for 4 minutes, okay, per exercise. So if you do 2 movements, so if you do, say, air squats and push-ups, then you're gonna do that for 8 minutes. So you do 20 seconds of air squats, 10 seconds off, 20 seconds of push-ups, 10 seconds off, and then you repeat. Okay, really easy. You can be done with that. You can get a really good, pretty hard workout that'll burn you out in 8 minutes. So it doesn't take a lot of time. You can do it in your room. You don't need any equipment. Okay, so super easy. If you needed suggestions about that when you're traveling next, shoot me a quick message on Facebook. I'm happy to give you some suggestions. It's really all about just keeping it simple. And then the other thing, most of the time you're walking everywhere when on holiday. So, lots of walking is great. We're definitely, as humans, we're designed to do a ton of walking. So, take advantage of that. If you have the option of walking or taking a bus, do the walk, right? It's going to be good for your health, good for your brain, and you're going to certainly maximize what you're going to get out of the holiday. And the last one, this is one that I think probably the first 4 people have thought about. The last one I think is the most crucial. This is to build in at least 1 recovery day per week. I used to do a lot of travel. Actually, I played in a band, and we toured, all over North America and throughout Europe. And we would go out for 6 or 8 weeks, and man, talk about burning out. I did not apply a lot of these steps, I will tell you. And but one thing that we were always very conscious of was building in a recovery day. And now I take that and I apply that to all my holidays. So even if I'm on a busy trip, I have lots of things planned, lots of activities that I want to do, I always make sure that I've got at least 1 recovery day per week built in. And I think that's super important. And really, you may look at it like, oh, that's a whole day that I'm not taking advantage of the local environment, or taking in activities that you could be doing. But think about the opposite. Think about if you take a recovery day, you're going to get rested. You're going to have much more opportunity to enjoy the following days. Because my experience, if you don't, by day 5, day 6, you're pretty done, right? You're burnt out. You're maybe not taking in the activities. You're not getting full enjoyment out of your holiday itself. So, just plan for it. I actually just put it in my schedule. I know usually it's like the day 4, day 5, and I just block that out. And that's a recovery day. I just stay close to home, whether that's just making sure I've stay close to the hotel, or do something really low key, go catch a movie, like just really build in the recovery day. So that's the 5 steps. So just to review, address jet lag. That's the number one thing. Prioritize sleep. Make sure you stay on track with your nutrition, most of the time. But a caveat to there is, plan for the off track and just be okay with that. Number 4 is to really maintain your exercise regime. At least 3 days out of any 7-day trip. And then number 5 is to build in a recovery day. So hopefully that will help you for your next trip or vacation. I'd love to get your comments if that's kind of stirred any thoughts or ideas of your own. Again, at the beginning I asked, what specific things you do when kids are involved. Again, that's something that I'm not, I just don't have the experience, so I wouldn't want to pretend. But I'd love to hear, because I'd love to be able to share that with other people. So comment below, give me feedback if this was valuable. Up next week, we're actually going to be rounding off the month. This is a Eat by Design challenge month. So we had the challenge running in the practice, which was to eat veggies with every meal. And so I'm going to highlight a few of my favorite market producers, the people that I buy, I try and shop from every week. And actually, you know what? I'm going to really try and get out and do some video on site, and so I can actually point out who I tend to buy from and why. All right. So until then, thanks for paying attention. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you guys next week.